within this region, there was not a high level of technical production leadership that existed. Now we have quite a solid group of really highly skilled technical production professionals that can go out and deliver anything from a major production to a gala dinner. It's not just a language thing, it's a whole cultural thing that you need to understand. Whether that comes from how they deal with hierarchy to how they deal with working culture, you have to understand all of those things if you're going to be effective in that environment.
Welcome to the StageLync podcast, your access and connection to the live performing arts. In this podcast, you'll hear from some of the industry's most inspiring people from around the globe who create magic on stage and backstage. Our guests share their knowledge, passion, and the real stories of how a show comes together. We hope you enjoy this episode. And welcome to the StageLync podcast. My name is Anna Robb, and I'm here with Anna Aguilera, and today we are talking with Karl Jenkins. Karl is an accomplished technical director and project manager with over a decade of experience in the entertainment industry. His career highlights include significant contributions to the critical success of Cirque du Soleil shows worldwide, where he served as head of lighting, project manager, and technical director, specializing in visual technology. Karl's leadership style is characterized by a strong emphasis on collaboration, innovation, and strategic vision. He is known for his ability to inspire and lead diverse, world-class teams, fostering an environment where creativity and technical excellence thrive. His approach to management combines meticulous planning with agile problem-solving, ensuring that even the most complex productions are delivered on time and to the highest standards. Throughout his career, Karl has demonstrated an exceptional ability to manage large-scale projects, guiding them from concept to completion with precision and expertise. His recent roles include technical director for Franco Dragone's iconic productions, The House of Dancing Water and Perle, before taking on the pivotal role of head of technical production at EXPO 2020 in Dubai. Karl, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anna. Hi, Anna.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Nice to see you both.
Welcome. Yeah, finally we have you on the podcast.
We made it.
We did. I want to start because I don't think I've ever asked you this question. How did you get started in the industry? How did you get into technical production in New Zealand?
Look, I think like a lot of us, I started with an interest, I guess, in performing arts from high school, I would say. When I went to a primarily casual, I guess, school in a very small town. It was a all-boys, quite strict schooling environment. And it didn't really have a performing arts option, I guess, at the beginning when I started there. But when I got into, I guess, my second or third year, there was a teacher that arrived at that school. And she decided that she was going to start sort of a performing arts drama club, I guess. It wasn't in the curriculum. It definitely wasn't something that you were made to do. It was just something that kind of started. And I was never into the sort of acting or performing side of things. However, there was a requirement for uplifting some of the performances, whether it be in a small space or in sort of a large presentation or at one of the sort of end of year concerts or whatever was sort of coming along. And I was at that moment very interested in all things sort of computers and that kind of world. So somehow those two worlds collided. I couldn't tell you how or remember how, but when they did collide, I then started to get involved in that world essentially. And from there, much to the disappointment too of some of my teachers in economics and physics and science and those worlds, I decided that instead of going to university to study, I guess a degree in business or economy or accounting, which is what they all wanted me to go and do, I decided that I would apply for the New Zealand Drama School, which in those days offered actually a bachelor's degree in performing arts management. And that's really where I saw myself going, starting off in the more technical realm, which was they had a advanced diploma in technical production. And then essentially you would just choose a stream, which mine was lighting. So you did a little bit of lighting design, a little bit of everything, really. It gave you a really good taste of what the industry was like, even though it was in little old New Zealand and everything was quite small. It's quite humble, I think. So it was really nice to start there. You got a lot of exposure in the industry because there was, not a lot of people doing quite a bit of work back then in Wellington and New Zealand. So we found ourselves not only kind of going to university to study, but we were also being embedded into the industry. And to be honest with you, that's where I met a lot of my industry contacts, whether it be them coming into the country or some of the, I guess, more standout people in the New Zealand industry, which then basically catapulted my career into the international world, essentially. So that's kind of how it started, I think.
So how do you get from, well, you already started to answer that question, from New Zealand and all the way to Cirque du Soleil, I guess, and Dubai Expo, like that, a little bit of a jump there?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a jump, but it was a very quick jump. So, I mean, to be honest with you, it was really being in the right place at the right time. In the third year of my degree, we are encouraged to do what they used to call a secondment. So essentially just being placed within and fully immersed within a production. And you could choose what that was. And it just so happened that there was a Cirque show coming to New Zealand. There was a couple of people within the school that I was in that had contacts within there. And I kind of thought, all right, well, it's something that when I used to watch those shows, I always would remember going, yeah, this is what I want to do. So what a better chance to do it when they were coming to New Zealand and I had a whole bunch of people who probably knew how to get me in there. And even if it was a very, very simple role, it was still going to give me the experience and more so the exposure into that world. So long story short, I managed to secure a position as I think I was a follow spot operator or something for the show, and spent 2 months with the show in Auckland and loved every minute of it. When the show finished, I then graduated from university. And once I graduated, went straight onto the road with a little New Zealand touring theatre show, which was amazing. It was in like a couple of vans driving around New Zealand with a couple of actors. And I think I got 2 weeks into that. Yeah, 2 weeks into that. And I got a call from the same Cirque show saying, hey, one of our technicians just left and we really need somebody quite urgently. Can you join us in Europe next week? So I had a pretty big decision to make at that point. And I think I made the right one, I guess. So I packed my stuff up, went home, said goodbye to my parents, and I haven't been home to live since then. I've always been away.
What do you learn from working with Cirque?
I think working with Cirque du Soleil, I think it's probably changed since I started working there. It's definitely become quite a different company over the years, and that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just the experience that you get from that is quite different. When I joined Cirque du Soleil, it was very much a family environment where you could bring your entire family on tour with you. We had a school on tour. We had teachers. We had all kinds of things. It was really a sort of a family away from home. So one of the amazing things with Cirque is that if you went there, I went there as a lighting technician. Those were not the skills and the only skills that you used or that you learned or that you had to get involved with. That was not it. It was all hands on deck. It is still somewhat like this as well. During the setup and teardown, you get involved in everything from sort of A to Z, whether it be unloading trucks to setting up the big top to organizing transfers to, stepping into roles and learning tracks that you would not usually, I guess, take under your banner of being a lighting technician, right? So I learned a huge amount very, very quickly. I also learned how to grow and reasonably quickly throughout the ranks. And it's also a different style of leadership as well, I think, that I learned. Where we were traveling through countries where we had a lot of local staff who were not exposed to that kind of level of performance or that kind of level of language, either in terms of English being a language that we presented ourselves in. So it taught me a lot about how to communicate, how to lead, and how to manage in some pretty crazy environments, Russia being one of them. We were the first big top show to go to Russia. And that was quite the experience. Japan, Brazil. There were many countries that we went to that we needed to adapt the way in which we approached not only language but culture, and that was a huge learning for me, and a learning that I don't think I would get from kind of anywhere else.
So from all your experiences with Cirque, and then you moved on, you basically kept working mostly with circus groups, but then branched out to or back to more general technical events and whatnot. And you started your own company, right? What was the trigger for you to start your own company?
I think there was two things. One was, I guess, regional. I after my time or during my time at Expo 2020, I came to a very interesting realization that within this region that there was not a high level of technical production leadership that existed here. So that was something that I identified and realized that there was kind of a gap in the market here for a group of sort of highly skilled technical professionals that sort of existed outside of a agency or outside of a rental company, that were able to attach themselves to companies to deliver some of these more complicated, high-profile projects which happen in the region. So that was kind of the first thing. The second thing was that I was also finding that there was a huge demand for. Well, I needed to find a way of being able to spread myself a little bit thinner, I guess. Because the way in which I was approaching projects was I could do one and then another one and another one, and that really I didn't see that as a way in which I could grow. I've always been very agile in the fact that I've been able to work across multiple projects at the same time, but being able to do that in a way that was sustainable and also that was appropriate for the different clients we were working with or that I was working with at the time. I needed to be able to have a group of people who could actually be delivery sort of associates. What I did is I looked at the model that lighting designers use. So lighting designers obviously work on multiple projects at the same time, and they have a group of associates which they then will assign to projects and go out and they will deliver for them. So I thought, well, why not? Why can't that work in the sort of technical production, technical direction field? So that we could then take on multiple projects at the same time, deliver them to the highest standard.
So you were talking about having good TDs around, correct, around the area?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was not that resource that really existed of highly skilled technical production specialists in the region. And there were a lot of requirements for it because there's lots of very technically complicated projects which happen out here. In Dubai and in the Middle East in general, was when I decided to sort of start the company and started to create a model where we could service multiple projects at the same time, with myself sort of being and sitting in a role of more of a technical producer, but then having a lot of sort of very highly skilled, hand-picked technical directors or technical associates around me, which I could essentially disperse onto productions to deliver. Now we have quite a solid group of really highly skilled technical production professionals that can go out and deliver anything from a major production to a gala dinner to an opening ceremony. There's multiple things which we kind of attach ourselves to now, and yeah, it's going well.
And when you're looking for your TDs that you are handpicking, what are the skills that you're looking for, and what makes a great TD for you and your team? Again,
I'll go back to the region. The region is quite special for anybody that knows and has worked here. I can see you both smiling. This region requires a lot of agility. You have to be incredibly agile. You have to be able to maybe listen to things that are a little bit crazy and digest them and pick them apart and be able to rebuild them into a way that is logical and makes sense and that is going to actually get the job done. And I think that's one of the most complicated things for anybody, not only in this region, but in technical direction in general. there's usually you're the sort of the one that is having to make very critical decisions, sometimes and most of the time at very critical periods of a production. So what I look for in a technical director is somebody that's going to be able to make those decisions in a way that is firstly safe, secondly considered of all of the factors that are around that surround those decisions, and thirdly somebody that obviously has the competency and experience. So there's a technical experience, but there's also a managerial experience, which is something that I think I find the hardest, I think, is finding somebody that really can sit in a situation that is not going to be very nice and be able to come out the other side of it with an understanding of the people that were involved and a direction forward. And that I know, and it's probably something that you've come across many times in your career, but it's quite a complicated thing to put my finger on. But it is something that when you know somebody has it, you know they have it straight away.
Mm. And do you think that having it is due to their exposure or their openness to learn, or what makes somebody an agile technical director? I mean, I'm asking you because I also asked this question myself. Like, can you train it? Can you teach somebody to be like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you absolutely can. A lot of it, yes, comes from experience, but a lot of it I find when I will bring a new technical director into the fold or somebody that hasn't worked with us before, I would never put them on a project by themselves to start with. I would and I have always, and I will always deploy them alongside myself directly before I'll sort of give them a little bit more freedom. Because there's kind of two parts to that. One, they're obviously representing part of our company, and there's a way that we want to portray ourselves. There are certain decisions that we make based on the way that we want to work. But more importantly, it's important that they understand how I would make decisions in certain scenarios, and they will kind of learn from that as well. I'm not saying that everybody that we hire is kind of 100% perfect, or even that we're 100% perfect. And I think that there is a certain sensibility to be able to learn from each other. And I think that's one of the biggest things that within this industry as a whole, there is definitely an education piece, and then there is also a experience piece. But most of all, it's more a people piece. I think being around people and learning from lots of different people is much more important than either of those other two things, because you can have experience by sitting on shows, but if you're not involved in really being trusted to engage with the most important people on a production, then you're not actually going to learn anything through that experience. You're just going to be there. So that's probably the biggest sort of takeaway that I've had over the last couple of years of trying to form this company. Is how we're going about it, and living through some of the more complicated shows that we've dealt with some of these people, and looking at them now coming out the other side and going, oh wow, okay, now you just know how to deal with that, and the region just plays another whole level into that.
And now a note from our sponsor. The StageLync podcast is proud to be sponsored by ClearCom. ClearCom is the leader in voice communications for theatre and the performing arts. Call your cues with the simplicity and elegance of ClearCom Intercom solutions. You can find them at clearcom.com. Go check them out.
So you've spoken a lot about TDs in the Middle East, I guess, and not very specifically, but there's a bit of a difference. You've also worked in Asia. And maybe you have a reference of how it's managed in Western countries. What's the difference of a TD in these different scenarios or places geographically?
I don't think that the TD necessarily is a different TD. I think that there is a different approach in each of those regions. I work quite often between Asia and the Middle East. I would say now we kind of have bases in both parts of the world, and my approach to dealing with specifically the local staff or the more regionalized staff in each of those places. I think I touched on it earlier. It's really understanding. It's not just a language thing. It's a whole cultural thing that you need to understand. whether that comes from how they deal with hierarchy to how they deal with working culture. You have to understand all of those things if you're going to be effective in that environment, because the last thing that you want is to walk into one of those environments and instantly try to bring something that those people are not going to understand. And it's not their fault that they're not going to understand that. It's the way that they have been brought up. It's the way that they have been brought up in this industry. And that would be one of the biggest things that Cirque gave to me, was a very good understanding of the entire world of production, because everywhere we went, it was different. We had our own thing that we needed to deal with, but if I didn't embrace the culture, whether that be the working culture or the culture of the country in each of the places that I went to, then I was never going to get any work done, because no one was ever going to want to work for me. So one of my biggest things is it's really important that people want to work with me, or that we become part of the same thing, and convincing people of that is the very first thing that I will always do when I enter into a production.
So tell us, of the last few years, what's the craziest production you've done with your company? You've done a lot, I know, but in terms of timeline or requests or, just to give people an idea or scale and scope of some of the crazy requests that come out in the Middle East, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's obviously two that spring to mind from last year. One of which, Anna, you'll know very well, the Dragone show that we pulled together in Saudi Arabia. I think was not only a highlight of kind of this company, but also sort of a highlight of my career as well, just in terms of being able to turn something around that at many moments had some sort of shaky kind of future. Not necessarily that it was never going to happen, but just that we needed to sort of change the entire plan 20 or 30 times. I will never forget the one day that you and I, Anna, jumped on a plane from Dubai and went to the freezing cold Saudi Arabia to go and look at the building that we were going to load an entire mega show into, which was just a big concrete slab with a couple of pieces of steel sticking out of it. And us looking at each other and going, how are we going to load a show into this in 3 weeks? Fast forward 3 months, and we were doing a show in the same thing, which was now a box with gardens and full front of house, and it looked like it had been there for years. So that definitely was a very challenging experience, and the amount of shifting and changing and conversations and tireless hours of just trying to make it work, and it would not be achievable in most parts of the world. I think that's one thing, especially in this region, that there are things that are done here that people think are crazy, but they're actually quite exceptional in terms of how fast you can turn things around, and people are just used to it. So you get, if I said this in other parts of the world, people would look at me like I'm crazy. Being able to produce something so large, so fast. Another one, very similar, was a closing ceremony that we did last year. That closing ceremony was actually a fan zone to start with, where we built a small stage and we had a couple of our team looking after it. It basically had performances on it every day, and then it was just going to go for 2 weeks and then be done with. About 2 days into it, the head of the ministry that was dealing with that specific event came in and looked at the stage and said, "I love this stage. We're going to do our closing ceremony on this stage," to which we were surprised. However, it needed to be twice as big, but it also needed to sort of operate every day as well. So then very fast, we needed to, first of all, fly a whole bunch of people to Saudi Arabia to look at this thing. Second of all, and in parallel, redesign the stage. Thirdly, find all the resourcing that we needed in terms of structure, et cetera. And this was in the middle of November, which is quite complicated to do. It all needed to be in Saudi Arabia as well. And then make a plan that overnight progressively grow the stage to the point where we would get to the closing ceremony. It would be in its sort of final construct to be able to deliver that show. And it wasn't just to making it bigger. It was things like there was a cauldron in the show that needed to be craned into the roof of it. The stage obviously was never designed to have a cauldron on it, so we needed to shore up the stage. The sound system wasn't big enough because it wasn't designed for that many people. And then as you start adding these layers, you need to consider everything at every level. And this all happened within 2 weeks. And then we delivered the closing ceremony, and that was that was it. So yeah, those were two of the most memorable for different reasons. But yeah, they keep coming.
It's hilarious, isn't it? I think just when you think like it can't get any kind of crazier, or the suggestions can't be any more insane, there they come, and you're like, how do we? Especially when you've been trained traditionally theatrically
Yes.
about how something should happen, you really got to throw that out the window sometimes, right? And just accept that it's going to be this way, whether you want it to be or not.
No, 100%. And I think that's something that I will always do with a new person, especially entering into our company, is that we obviously have a wealth of knowledge and experience within ourselves. But if we do bring somebody else, and it does happen sort of at the last minute, especially to a production that is as complicated and as crazy, I guess, as that. It's about watching how they digest that, because it is quite hard to walk into that and go, whoa, I need to just leave everything that I kind of learned in terms of the way that we have a process and a structure and a strategy, that all just needs to stop and mold into what this new reality is. So that's always an interesting thing for me to watch for somebody that hasn't worked in the region or hasn't worked on a production that's quite as crazy as that, and how they deal with that. I think that tells a lot of if they're the right kind of person to sort of exist in this environment. And some people are not, and that's totally fine. But when you've got somebody that can operate in that environment, you just know.
Yeah. Do you think that it's because it's still kind of a developing market? Do you think it's going to slow down in that kind of craziness, ambitiousness, and timelines, or is it because it's a youthful industry, or do you think it's just going to stay that way over the next sort of 10, 20 years?
I think as a region, the Middle East as a whole is sort of heading in a direction of stability for sure. However, the each different country is at a different period, I guess, and sometimes even each emirate here in the UAE is at a different period within that journey. I think Dubai is at a place of sort of stability now, where the mold of how to essentially do production is kind of settled down a little bit. It's still very fast, but there is a lot of access to the people and a lot of access to the ways of working, where it's got to a comfortable level to be able to deliver things, and all of the companies to support that kind of exist. And everybody sort of knows each other, and you can kind of get whatever you want to get. And also the way in which the government entities or the entities that are producing these shows go out to an agency world or to a world of producers where they know them, they trust them, they are embedded within this country, and they've got a lot of experience behind them. Now, Saudi Arabia, for example, is very different. Saudi Arabia is the place where everybody's starting their own agency, where all of the agencies or all of the producers that were kind of international and very large scale kind of all went to Saudi Arabia, set up their own shops, and set up everything to produce some of the amazing shows that were coming out of that country. And what's happening, I feel, is that there is now an opportunity. The learning has happened. The first round of learning has happened within the Saudi Arabian culture. And what's happening now is all of that incredible imported knowledge that came into the country is now being picked up by local companies and picked up by local entities and reformed in a way. So there's a huge transition happening where local companies are picking up very major productions and major shows. And I think the next sort of couple of years of that transition is going to be very interesting to watch. I think the support is still required. I think it's great that the country is developing its own identity within the performing arts and production. But yeah, it's been very interesting to watch. So different countries and different regions are sort of progressing in different ways. And they usually get pushed on by major events. Qatar obviously went through a huge push at some point, but it was very heavily supported by Dubai, by people in the UAE for production, things like that. Whereas Saudi Arabia is really taking a stance to do it, as much as possible internally. It's obviously a much bigger country, so the resourcing is there. The drive from the government is there as well to really push this this industry. Yeah, so
when you refer to Qatar, you mean the World Cup, correct?
Yeah. Because large scale events really push this region, and Saudi Arabia is staring down the barrel of some pretty large scale events. So they know that, and they also know that they won't be able to service that completely internationally. So they are very smart at developing in these next couple of years a very solid core of production people within the country to be able to be a world leader in that. And I think they will. They have that drive to do it.
Yeah. Great. Well, we always finish our podcast with 2 questions, so I'm going to ask them now. Tell us about your favorite thing about your job or the industry.
My favorite thing about my job is definitely the amazing people that I get to spend my days with. There's not another industry, I don't think, that is quite like it. You meet people from all walks of life. You meet people with all different types of experiences. You go through a lot with a lot of people, so inherently you just get close to people. And I think that is one thing that that over the years, I can go to countries all over the world, and there will be people that I can reach out to, and it's like we work together. Yes.
All right. So the final question is, if you would change something about the industry or your job, what would that be?
It's probably a different answer for both of those. I don't think it's the same answer for both.
You can answer both of those questions if you want.
What would I change about the industry? I would love to see the industry have much better access for people moving into it. I think that's something that's it's quite a big jump coming from. I was very fortunate in the way that I moved from sort of where I was to where I got, but I think that there's a large step from coming out of an education program and moving into this world. And I think the large step is the thing that everyone says, yeah, you've got all the knowledge, we know the experience, but then how do we foster the experience? How do we bring people into this world? And it's something that we do here. I've spoken a couple of times to some of the students out at there's a performing arts center here. So I think it's a lot about kind of giving back from our side, but not just going and speaking to people, but also bringing them onto productions. And we are now doing that as well. And we have kind of a connection with a lot of student bodies, and we'll bring them alongside us to start to get that sort of embedded access to production at this level. Because otherwise, there's no way, really, that you can grow into that without having the access. So generating that access, I think, is really important. I don't think we can ever do too much. I know it exists. I know that people are really trying, but a lot of the time we're just too busy, right? And I think that it's that becomes a problem. But yeah, so access and into developing the up and coming people in our industry is very important. What would I change about myself? I think it's something that I'm already trying. Yeah. About my job. Yeah. I think that it's already something that I've identified, and it's stepping away from having to be the person that's on the ground, and having to be the person that that is required to be attached to a production full time, and changing the industry a little bit to, and I guess is why I started the company that I have now, is to be able to sort of step away as more of an oversight role, and allow other people to act in kind of an associate production way, to be able to deliver projects. And that's something I can't do 100 projects myself. So being able to lead and mold and foster a different way of working is something that I'm actively working on, and actively pushing for, because we need to have that. You can't have single individuals around the world being responsible for everything.
Well, thank you, Karl, so much for joining us on the StageLync podcast today. It's always a joy and a pleasure to speak to you, and best of luck for your next projects.
Thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the StageLync podcast. StageLync is an online platform that gives you access and connection to the live performing arts. As a guest, you can read about live performing arts from across the globe and gain insights from performers and artists on stage and all the amazing people who work behind the curtain. If you are an industry professional, StageLync Pro offers jobs, networks, and career support tools, and you can build your own professional profile on the site. As a StageLync podcast listener, you are eligible for 20% off your StageLync Pro membership. Visit us at stagelync.com, and when joining, use the code SLPodcast. StageLync, that's StagelYnc.com.